Amen. Last week, Jesus introduced us to the Beatitudes on the Sermon on the Mount. And we're still in chapter 5 of Matthew, 5, 6, and 7. That is Jesus on the mountain, on the Sermon on the Mount. And he continues. It's interesting in what Jesus doesn't say today. He doesn't say, if you want to become salt and light, you need to do this. Or, before I will call you salt or light, I'll need this from you. He says both simply and directly, you are the salt of the earth. You are the light of the world, just like we say. Interestingly, with salt, it's not an element itself that's useful to itself. If it's just left alone, it really doesn't do anything. How is it effective? Or what's it good for? When you put it in food, now it gives food a little taste, something that could contrast it with. When you put it on the road, what does that do? Melts the ice. And it also ruins your car. But that's a whole other story. my Buick out there, you'll see the rest of it. But its value comes when it's applied on other things. Interestingly enough, in the early church, Christian communities, when the child was baptized, they would take a little bit of salt and put it on the child's tongue, or the adult, whoever is baptized. I go, I didn't know that. That's interesting. And I go, I wonder if people do that today. So I went to my computer and I Googled putting salt on an infant's tongue for baptism. And I found a picture from 1970. I don't know who this is. It's a junior. The kid's kind of like, you can see the little grimace there. But the dad's pretty happy. They still do that in some traditions. Why? Well, they remembered what Jesus said. You are the salt of the earth. You are the salt of the earth. And so they would put that as a reminder. Salt, necessary for human life. We all know that. Especially in hot climates where you do a lot of sweating. Years ago, ancient times, if you controlled the salt, you controlled the economy. Believe it or not, in China, 300 years before Jesus was born, the salt taxes there contributed to over half of China's revenue. And a lot of it went to the building of this thing. Does anybody know what this wall is? Great Wall of China. Yeah, Great Wall of China. It covers a long way. Great Wall of China. In the Roman Empire, the ancient Romans, the very first road of its famous roads, the very first one they built was called the Way of Salt, Via Salaria, or the Salt Road. And what did they build it for? Well, to transport salt. They needed it. It was part of their economy. Interestingly, in the 20th century, in the early 20th century, the first 20, 30 years, in India, the British ruled India at the time. It was one of their colonies. And they placed a very high tax on salt. It was even if you made your own salt, they would tax you for it. And you could not make it without a license. It's kind of interesting. It was essential for life. It was essential to have it. And but they wouldn't let you do it on your own. Well, the guy on the far right is named Gandhi, his wife there, and other people there. This is a statue in India. It is commemorating the time when they walked. He led a march that was 240 miles long. Okay, walking that far. They walked to make their own salt. They went out to where the monsoon rains in the summertime just flood these areas, and then in the winter it stops, and the sun just kind of dries it up. You can make your own salt that way. There's people that still do that. It takes about 6 or 7 months, they say, to people go out there and make their own salt. Well, anyway, the Salt March, and it is the beginning of the Indian independence movement. It's interesting. Salt, making salt. What about light? We're saying you are the light of the world. That light functions in order, allows us to see. We light the candles here, symbolically, more or less. I mean, we have all kinds of light in here, and of course the windows. But on Christmas Eve, we light the center candle. I lit that again today, just kind of a reminder of that. During this season of Epiphany, the lights keep shining. There's the Star of Bethel over there in the top panel there. And it keeps going on. We walk in the light of Christ. Got the 3 wise men bringing their gifts to worship Jesus. Regardless, the light keeps shining. The light keeps shining. It's hard for us to imagine what we'd be like without having light. You know, a couple weeks ago, I used this picture of the United States at night. You know, it's clearly, you can see that, especially Florida. Wow. Anyway, where's Minnesota? So anyway, what was it like? We have street lights, we have night lights, we have all these things. But years ago in the ancient world, when the sun went down, and if you didn't have a candle or a lamp, it was dark. And Isaiah puts it this way: when the night came, in darkness we groped like the blind along. Oops. We need to put the Jeopardy song in that soundtrack. In darkness we grope like the blind along a wall, groping like those who have no eyes. The lives of the disciples then with Jesus and now with us are here and meant to affect the world the way salt and light did. What else does salt do? Well, I'll show you. What are in those jars? Can you tell? What's that? Pork hocks? Yeah. Or if you catch northerns and you cut them up and you pickle them. Yes. They're pickled fish or pickled ham hocks or pickled. You can buy a thing that's called pickled gizzards, pickled eggs. I haven't tried the gizzards yet, but I've had the eggs. Okay, it's preserves. Preserves. To keep it from spoiling. Likewise, the faith, the disciples are meant to encourage and preserve the faith, to pass it along. You know, keep passing that along. And also to help the world from spoiling. To preserve what God has made here. Some of you have had this before. Salted caramels. Why would you put salt on chocolate? And I didn't touch that. Well, I ate one. It's like, wow, it enhanced it. It enhances it. It makes it even more delicious. And of course, we talked about that already on the sidewalks. You put it on stuff. It preserves. It enhances. The early Christian church was pretty persecuted by the Romans. And one guy, his name is Justin Martyr, he was very eloquent. He was a good preacher. He was an early Christian father, and he was defending the morality and the actions and the way of life of the Christian community that was being persecuted by the Roman emperor. The Romans say those Christians are no good. They're teaching things that we don't agree with, and they're telling us there's only one God, and we have all our gods that we worship, and they're saying we're wrong. Anyway, they were being persecuted for that. And Justin said, well, wait a minute. And his arguments, he listed some ethical and philosophical arguments to convince the emperor to stop persecuting us. We are on your side. We're on the side of the good. And he says this, right here. We have been taught and firmly believe that God accepts only those who imitate the good things, which are His. They're God's. We're for the good. Temperance and righteousness and love of mankind and whatever else truly belongs to the God, which is called by no given name. remember now as a kid, years ago, I cut my leg on it was a barbed wire fence, but I didn't feel it. It was a sharp, just a real sharp barb, and I kept playing, and it was hot out summertime, and all of a sudden I felt something stinging. I go, where'd that come from? I looked, my whole leg was bleeding. And when you're a kid and you see blood, what's the first thing you think of? You're gonna die. Okay. So I freaked out and I ran home, and my mom said, "You're not gonna die." Well, there's blood all over my leg. And then the next worst thing, if you're a kid, and your mom sees you have blood on your leg, what's mom gonna do? She's gonna clean it. She put soap on it. Don't touch my leg. Well, anyway, that salt, the sweat, don't draw attention to the wound. And the Christian community is often called to draw attention to the wound, to draw attention to something that's wrong, something that's bad, something that can hurt us. And oftentimes they're criticized for saying, what are you sticking your nose in? Everybody's good. It's to draw attention. You leave that alone, you don't know it's wounded, and then it can get infected. And that's why moms, they're the best. They know what they got to do. They got to clean that wound. Despite our protestations. I did survive it, in case anybody's wondering. Okay, we survived it. But anyway, to draw attention to things that need to be stopped. Oftentimes, churches do. My brother-in-law is a pilot, and he told me when you fly at night, I was just learning how to fly. He says, when you fly at night, make sure you have your landing light on. And I'm like, okay, that makes sense, you know. So when you come into land, you can see the runway. He goes, well, that way, when you're coming into land, you turn your light on. If you see something you don't like, just turn your light off and keep on going. I'm like, and he just kind of winked at me. But this is a picture of going into an airport in the clouds, and you're just breaking through, and you can tell by looking just that the way the lights are arranged. This is called the precision approach. And on the right-hand side, this thing is called a precision approach path indicator. Path. And two red and two white. And just by seeing the two like that, you know you're on the right. You're coming in the right angle. You're on the right spot. If you keep that 2 white, 2 red, you'll land exactly where you need to be without even looking at anything else. It's just a visual way to make sure that, okay, I'm on track. I'm centered. I'm going down the center. And if there are 4 red, you're dead. Who said that? Kelly said that. Okay. 4 red, you're dead. So you're too low. You're too low. 4 white. You'll fly. How do you know all this? 4 white, you'll fly all night. You're too high. And you'll land way down at the end. In fact, if it's really bad out, really low visibility, and you're white lights, you might land so far down you won't be able to stop. And then you have to go around. And when you have to go around, you don't get to go back to the front of the line. You get to go to the back at the end of the line. And that may take half hour, 45 minutes. So if you're flying passengers, you don't want to do that because they get upset. Anyway, lights, just by seeing, you can see whether you're on the right track. And that's what Christians are called to do too. To help others see where they're at in the world. Let's let your light shine before others. Light, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good works and glorify your Father. We say this at every baptism. It's I light the candle from the Christ candle, and I usually ask a young child to help out, to hold the light, to hold it up. It's a reminder for the child, for their parents, their sponsors, but it's also a reminder for all of us watching it. We have the same call. It's not just the child who gets the candle. We've all been given a candle. What else about light? What does it do? So kids, I want you to help me out. There's 2 of you here. Now, I got a brand. Anybody else? What album cover is this from? Dark Side of the Moon. Okay, good breaker. Each of us has unique flavor, unique color that is our own, but it doesn't exist for its own sake. Letting our light shine is a two-way street. We let our light shine, we affect others, they affect us, and we brighten the world to continue that we can all see more clearly what God has in store